Given that I write like 10 drafts to make a novel, it's not surprising I have to do 20 takes to make a video. Okay. My name is Ellie Barnes. I'm a writer and a librarian. And today I'd like to tell you how I got the idea for my first novel. A few years ago I was listening to an interview with John Irving, who is the author of Cider House Rules. He said something that stuck with me at that time, but I didn't fully understand it. He was asked about his process in developing a story. He said he always gets like an idea or an image, and he thinks that's the beginning, and then as he plays with it, he realizes that is almost always the end of the piece. When I first sat down to write, I intended to write a short story, or a long story. I didn't actually know, I just wrote down what was in my head. Now I knew enough to take the image that had been sitting in the back of my brain that had been kind of nagging me, and at least back up a little bit from there. That first image was of a young girl, a teenager, on a city street with a mob of angry people running at her. They were coming to hurt her, and I knew someone else was coming from behind to help her. Now, I also knew that she was strong. She was as strong as the tallest man in the mob. But there was still only one of her, and there were hundreds of them. When I sat down to write that story that I didn't know how long it would be, I began with those people who were coming to help her. And gradually, as I was doing it, I realized I was dealing with a whole world, because the whole thing was taking place in the afterlife. I realized I had to think through how people died who went to hell, and how people died who didn't go to hell, and how they entered from Earth, and how this changed their bodies, and how that changed the way they fight, and how that changed the way they interact with each other, and what all of it meant. The world ended up being far bigger than I had initially anticipated, which is why it's now going to be 5 novels. Because the world was so big, I realized I needed to back much farther up and give the audience a better introduction into it. So in keeping with what John Irving was trying to say, I've now realized that image that sat in the back of my brain nagging at me, that caused me to start writing. Parts of it are now in the 3rd book. Parts of it will be the beginning of the 4th book. The one thing that has remained is the young girl. She's there from the very beginning, and her name is Allison.